So this is my second blog for Education in the United States class. This blog is going to be focusing mainly on Chapter 11, which I thought was a very interesting chapter because it dealt more with the actual approach to teaching that's taken. And the first thing that really stood out to me in this section was the different kinds of curricula which really exist. I think that it's very important to look at the explicit, hidden, and null curriculum all together, but all separately. Together they create the basis of education. But then separately, each of them brings something very different to the table that I think is just as important to evaluate. I mean, the hidden curriculum is what the students gain indirectly from the lesson. To me, I take that as the applications and how the students can use what they're learning in real life. Whereas the explicit curriculum are the lessons, the skills, the concepts that are really being taught. And the null curriculum is something that I think really needs to be challenged, because I think blatantly ignoring a topic or not addressing it isn't right, because you shouldn't really be ignoring anything in education. So I completely agree with the textbook in saying that making the null curriculum more explicit is the way to go. What I found particularly striking in the text was the differences in curriculum planning that exist across the board in different districts. I never would have thought that the sociological, the economic, and the different demographics that make up a district are going to change what curriculum is being taught in each district. To me, I honestly thought that curriculum was something that was pretty much standard across each state and ultimately across the country. So that was pretty eye-opening to me, I'm not going to lie. One more thing to go along with curriculum planning is that I think the use of scientifically based research is beyond important. While I do believe that students are the ones who really run the classroom, I think that using scientifically based research allows the school to see what truly is working and what isn't working, because it gauges how the students are doing in classes and responding to different lessons. So I mean, while students and teachers should take different approaches, I think using research that it can be backed up is just as important at the same time. This section of the text also dealt with discussing a lot about what education is today, and what essentially I'm going to be basically going into when I start teaching. I'm obviously going to focus on math because I want to be a math teacher. So the curriculum that's being developed in math now is what's being called the new math. That sounds kind of funny, but in the 1960s and 70s, the new math was created. So now we're revolutionizing math once again. Algebra is now being integrated to elementary and middle schools, which I find to be fascinating. Like, I didn't really have any experience with algebra until late middle school, which, I mean, I think it's going to be great that this new math is putting more of an emphasis on algebra, because as it's stated, because 21 states now require students to pass algebra to graduate, it's so important because it's the foundation of mathematical problem solving. And when you take all this problem solving, you can stress more about real-life applications while focusing less on the actual calculations and theoretical concepts. I mean, for me, I know the beginning years in math was a lot of calculation. So, I mean, they're steering away from that now, which I personally think is a great idea, because once you do get to the higher levels, calculators are used a lot more often. So it's almost as if the new math is revolutionizing things to make our society more advanced. In my opinion, that's what it's doing. One thing that was discussed in the text that I am very torn on whether I support or whether I don't support is direct instruction, which is a highly structured, teacher-centered strategy that capitalizes on such behavioral techniques as modeling, feedback, and reinforcement to promote the basic skills. Personally, I want to say that it's good because it kind of ensures that all students are going to be on the same level as far as they're going to be getting feedback, they're going to be getting the same amount of attention from the teacher. But at the same time, I think it's too stringent, and I think it puts way too many parameters and limits on the students, because there's only so much reinforcement that can be done. So, I mean, while I do like the idea that it's kind of equal and everything is very direct, which is how some students need to learn, I think it's all about how the teacher portrays it and how the teacher really teaches using direct instruction. Because if you follow the formula so stringently, it's not going to work. I'll tell you that right now. When the same class is the same day after day after day, it just becomes monotonous and, quite frankly, annoying. One thing I am a huge proponent of is differentiated instruction. I think that it is so important, it can't be stressed enough, to provide different learning opportunities to all students with all different needs. You can differentiate the content. You can differentiate the processes and activities. You can differentiate the environment being created. Like, the sky is the limit. You can do anything to adapt to your students' needs. And I think that that's what teaching is all about. You need to get to know your students, and you need to know what they need. So that kind of like goes with the non-direct instruction, because it allows discovery and cooperative learning. Students can discover what they need to discover by figuring it out themselves, which, I mean, to them, sometimes it might even spark them even more to want to learn. And cooperative and group learning, I think that's great too. I mean, it's not the only way the learning should be done. Teachers need to have some sort of influence in the classroom, but when you can work with your peers and learn from your peers, that's an invaluable skill. Okay, one last thing that I think is really important to discuss is what's going to influence the curriculum in the 21st century. Because this is what we're walking into. This is what I'm going to be walking into. We need to know that inclusive classrooms are the reality. I think that's great. Like, I'm torn on whether to be a special ed teacher or a math teacher. The fact that everything is going to be inclusive is great. Nobody should be segregated. Special ed students shouldn't be segregated from the general ed. So I think that that is a great thing. Accountability is something that's very debatable, but unfortunately it is something that is going to shape education. And I already saw it in my life. I mean, standardized tests. I had some teachers who taught to the test. Those teachers are not what I want to be. But I mean, at the same time, it's important to realize that the test is there and you need to perform on them. So there is that divide, because you need to make sure students do have that basis of knowledge. So it's really a toss-up with that. Like, standardized testing is awful in some senses, but it really can be helpful in others. And we need to accept this change. This radical change that's been happening over the past 20, 30 years in education is going to continue to happen. So being a teacher in the next generation, I need to expect the unexpected and be ready to change day by day, which can be in the curriculum, which can be in the hidden explicit curriculum, which can be in the explicit or implicit differentiation. It can be in differentiation of the lessons. It can be in anything. So we just need to know how to adapt. And I think that's what's going to be great. Who knows where education is going, but wherever it's going, I'm going with it. I'll see you guys for next blog.